This episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine is brought to you by BioGlan MedLab. Is backache, mild joint stiffness, muscle soreness, and inflammation impacting how you move and feel each day? BioGlan MedLab Clinical Pain Relief is a triple action formula combining clinically researched term extra turmeric to relieve muscle pain and soreness after exercise, Boswellia apris flex to relieve mild joint pain, inflammation and stiffness, and Eucommia bark traditionally used in Chinese medicine to relieve muscle ache and pain. With benefits reported from as little as 5 days. Try BioGlan MedLab Clinical Pain Relief and feel the difference. Learn more at bioglanmedlab.com.au. Always read the label and follow the directions for use. Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Natural Medicine, the Legend series. And today I am joined by Nicolle Wood, who is an award-winning naturopath, homeopath, clinical emotional freedom techniques practitioner, definitely a fellow of ATMS with 20 years experience in holistic healthcare. Nicky's career spans health retreats, international spa leadership, community education and private practice, and has been shaped by her professional expertise and also her lived experience, I hear. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from our guest. Welcome to the program, Nicky.
Thank you, Annie. It's been a wonderful surprise to start the year off with an invitation to talk about the past. You know, we're always thinking about healthcare in the future, so it's really lovely to talk about how we got here as a practitioner as well. So 20 years. Actually, it's my 30th year in practice. I graduated in 95. I know. But 20 years with ATMS, and in between though that 10-year gap, I was in and out of the country doing some of the adventures you were talking about.
Oh, how fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, thank
yeah.
you for that.
Thank
So,
you.
so did you start, first of all, let's go right back to the beginning then. Did you start as a natural medicine practitioner, or did you have a career even before that?
Yeah, I did. I had a career in welfare. So I worked in, back then it was the Department of Social Security,
Mm-hmm.
and I had been working there for about 7 years. So I started there pretty much straight out of high school and worked my way up to a level 4 administrative officer, which is sort of like a middle management type position with some decent responsibilities in the community, investigating welfare fraud. So it was interesting, and then there was another period of time there where I was on the desk and in one of the busiest offices in the country, which was at Southport at the time. And so I just realized that I really loved helping people, even though people were in decently distressed states. I felt like there was more I could do for them.
Mm.
And I was bound by the rules and regulations and the red tapes of what we could do as officers of the government. But it taught me a lot about human nature, and it taught me a lot about conflict resolution. And I
Mm.
learned a lot about how to really watch people's behavior and what they say, how they say it, to lead into whether or not there's a question there that needed to be asked. So it taught me a lot to
Mm.
prepare me for this next chapter. And I was still quite young at that
Mm.
point. So I was 22 when I
Wow.
went into natural therapy. So I, really had sort of gone straight out of high school, year 10, straight into working for the government. And then in that transition between my 17th and 18th year, I moved away from my hometown and was working. I think I'd been working for a year at that point, transferred up to the Gold Coast, and here I stayed.
What a great place to stay. Did you
Well,
have a aha moment? What made you suddenly go naturopathy? Like, how did
yeah,
that happen?
I sure did. Being so young, I was very much in the party scene on the Gold Coast and enjoyed, some pretty decent, very unhealthy lifestyle choices. But it was at that point that I I woke up one morning and I just heard the word naturopath. It was literally like I woke up very early and it was like a bolt of lightning. This word dropped into my head and I went, "What is a naturopath?" So
Yes.
it made me feel a little bit curious, and
Mhm.
I had no intentions of changing my career at that point. It wasn't even on my radar. I was just busy partying and going to work and getting my paycheck and partying and having a good time, and probably, doing too much substance abuse at that point in time of my life. And I was getting unwell a lot. So I was feeling like something needed to change, but I wasn't educated enough around natural therapies and self-care and all of those things that we now live and breathe every day,
Mm.
to pull myself up. But I woke up this one morning and I heard the word naturopath. So I started to investigate that a little bit more. And of course, back then we had no social media. We couldn't chat GPT it. We
Chat GPT, naturopath. What do they
That's
do?
right.
Who do they
That's
help?
I see, exactly. So I don't even know how it was that I found the college, but I went to the Academy of Natural Therapies, which was at that stage really the only place on the Gold Coast that you could study at. And I just went and placed some inquiries there, and I met the massage therapist teacher there as I was discussing my interest into learning naturopathy. And he came in and said, look, you need to do massage anyway. It's part of your degree or part of your studies. How about you do a year of massage with me first
Mm.
and keep you, because I was trying to work out how I was going to afford to do all
Yes.
of that,
Yeah.
and keep your job, like still do your job. You can do this after work. Then you can start massaging. And he kind of taught me a little bit about the fact that I could use massage as an income, as a conduit to pay for my tuition. And so I did that and registered for, so I did a full year of Swedish and therapeutic soft tissue, deep tissue massage at the college. And I did a bridging course because I needed to do a bridging course. I'd left year 10. I had no science behind me. I had no year 12. I had nothing
Mm.
really. So I was starting pretty much at the baseline again, relearning as a mature age student how to science. So
Wow.
yeah, it was a baptism of fire. So
What a shock
I
to the system,
it
particularly a
was.
party girl system.
It really was. And once I started understanding a little bit about biochemistry, I started to realize just how much damage I was doing to my body at the time. So did the bridging course whilst I was doing the massage, and then went straight into naturopathy. And at that point in time, the course was 3 years long. So it was a diploma of applied science. That was the qualification requirements at the time. And so I did my first year, which was 3 days a week, and I was able to take leave without. I actually job shared with another mother, and who I worked with at Social Security. So we job shared for a year, and in the second year, um, we job shared again. But by the time the third year came along, my course requirements needed me there full time in order to finish it full
Mm.
time. So I went to, so Nori, the second year I did this, I went to my managers and HR, and I said to them, look, I need to take a year's leave without pay. This is the second year, sorry. Need to take a year's leave without pay. They said, yes, we can do that. No trouble at all. So I did that, and I was massaging part time. And in that year, through my massage, got contacted by an entertainer's manager
Yeah.
to join them, to do some massage for him while he was in town. He was in town doing some shows, and I said, "Yep, no trouble at all." So I went in to his hotel room, did some massage treatment for him, which is, I didn't know this, but that was a an introduction or a sort of an interview, I guess, as to whether or not they felt I was going to be suitable for the next offer. And the next offer was to join him on tour in Japan, and well, he
Awesome.
did shows, live shows, and to run a program, a naturopathic program that had been set by naturopaths here in Australia, but who couldn't actually implement with him. So they needed somebody in a junior role, I guess,
Mm.
to um, run the Gerson program for him. So
Amazing.
on
And you're
on
like,
my
yep, that's me.
I, I did. I had 10 days notice. So I had to go back to college and say, okay, I need to defer it was in October. So it was sort of like the end of the year's semester. I need to defer it, come back in 6 weeks and finish it off. Is that okay? They were like, oh, we don't really get this very often, but okay. They let me do that. And I went away and did that. And the night before we had to leave, my passport got stolen. I'd only just gotten it visa stamped, and my passport got stolen. So I'm 23 years of age at this stage, never really traveled very much, never been into a country who didn't have English as a reasonably high
Yeah.
level. I've been to Indonesia, but not to Japan. So I had to travel without the entourage and go the day later. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. But from a natural therapist perspective, it was absolute gold. And I still refer to this story now when I'm teaching my clients and my patients about hydrotherapy, because I was so stressed about being in the country, having lost my passport, had to I got a new passport the next morning, by the way, but I couldn't get to the visa office in time to fly out with everyone. So
Yeah.
we landed, I was stressed, but I went straight to work. I went upstairs, I did the polarity therapy massage I was charged to do, got everything ready for his evening enemas and things like that. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was exhausted from stress and also just the travel. And I
Yeah.
started crying during the treatment. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't hold it back. And I was trying to sort of like suck it up and go, no, 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 I can't. So he could feel that I was emotional, and he stopped the treatment. And then I thought, oh no, this is it. I've lost the whole job. I'm going to get sent back the day after I got there. And he said, I'm going to call my interpreter. I'm going to get her to take you out. And he told her to take me to the onsen. So at 11 o'clock at night, I went to an onsen in Osaka. We were there for 2 hours. I'd never been in a place like it. I'd never been naked in front of other women before. And these women were like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you've got to wash there and do this. And then I just settled in. And then 2 hours later, I came home at 1 a.m., just after 1 a.m. The next morning, he couldn't even recognize me. He walked right past me. And he said, you look so different. And I
Wow.
said, I feel amazing. Like, I feel completely ready to do this. And the trip went off like a bang. In fact, we ended up extending it and went to Taiwan afterwards. So, and he did more shows then. So it was an amazing experience. I learned about the Gerson therapy program, which we weren't really studying at that stage because we weren't ready to. It was year two of study. And then I learned all about Japanese culture, real life experience being on the road with an entertainer. Backstage was amazing. He was a hypnotist, so I was also learning a little bit about how the body responds there. But it was just such a rich learning experience being on the road and having all of these things happen. And then when we got back, I went. I had another year to go, and I went back to Department of Social Security HR. I said I need another year's leave without pay, and they said, "Well, we only have it in the Act that you're allowed to take 1 year leave without pay." And I said, "Okay, well, how long do I have to come back for to get another year's leave without pay? See if I can work it in around my studies." And they didn't have a precedent for that. It actually went down to Canberra, and they had to change the Act
Oh.
it, because they had no precedent for how long someone needed to come back. And they said, literally, you could come back for an hour and go. And I said, well, how about I come back for a day and I'll
Okay.
say hello to everyone, which is what I did. I went back for a day, had another year's leave without pay. They changed the Act. By the time I came back at the end of that year, I resigned and then went straight into natural therapies. That's how I got started, essentially.
But Nikki, you are a rule breaker. You're just like, I'll just make my own, forge my own path, go with the flow. I love it. Change other people's rules, which then weren't necessary for you at the end, but whatever.
It didn't work. I know. I made my dad very proud that day because he likes lateral thinking, and it was really, me thinking outside the box. But really it was just me trying to get to where I wanted to get to. And I was
Yeah.
just looking for any particular possible way that could happen. And I couldn't see where it was. I went through the act because they train you very well in that industry to read your rules and know them so you can implement them. So I did. I just literally did what they told me to. But yeah, and so here we
Exactly.
are.
So you
Yeah.
entered the retreat industry before it was a fashionable thing to do, by the sound of things. You're an early entry into that space. Is that an area that you just because you love that experience early on, it became your thing that you were then going to be passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the retreat experience came about through another friend of mine who was already working at Camp Eden at the time. And uh, she said to me, I'm moving up and I'd need you to do the work that I'm doing. Would you like to do it? We just hit it off. And I said, absolutely, let's go for it. So, and I was still studying. So it was a perfect environment for me to be studying in. I got, uh, credits towards my course for all of the different aspects of work that I did there. And over the few years that I was working there, the girlfriend, also opened a retreat. For once a month, we ran a women's retreat down in Mullumbimby, off a private property that she was living on. So I had this really rich sort of experience going straight in to being in the retreat environment, and it solidified my passion for natural therapies there and then. So as at back then, you were able to do 6 weeks as a guest first. You didn't pay for staying there. Sorry, 6 weeks. You did a week as a guest and then 5 weeks working in all the different departments. You didn't get paid, but you also didn't pay for your retreat week. So in that, I was able to, work as a like a volunteer at each of the departments. And I thought, oh my God, I want to come back and work here. And that's how I got into actually working there to start with. It started off with work experience. And so going into the retreat environment also opened me up to a whole new level of 5-star service, which I hadn't really had a lot of experience in other than that trip to Japan and Taiwan, because that was the first time I did 5-star anything. So for me, it was a real eye opener to just that level of service that certain people in our environment learn to expect. I didn't realize that it was even a thing. So for me, it sort of grounded my passion for natural therapies, but it also taught me about the level of service that as
Mm.
practitioners we need to think about, because people are really looking for not only being led and shown, but they haven't forgotten who they are and what their standards are as well in
Mm.
certain areas. So it was really interesting. I met some incredible people there, and over the time, I moved up the ranks and became a program coordinator. So I lived in for a week and then lived out for a week, which is then when I was practicing. And so I'd run my practice week on, week off, and every fourth week, I'd go down to the other retreat and run that for the week. So it was a busy retreat and
Mm.
practice time. But boy, I met some interesting people, and again, some high profile people. It was around the same time that Lady Diana was killed. It was around the same. So on one of my weeks on the Sunday intake was the day that she was killed. So I had to break it because no one had phones there. You weren't allowed to have any kind of contact with the outside world. There was no mobile phones around except those big bricks, and no one really bought them in. So it was a really interesting time to be in retreat world, because also that was around the same time that Michael Hutchins had died, and we'd received quite a few people connected to these groups that were healing through those poignant
Mm.
moments in Australian and global history. So it was a really interesting time to be there.
Yeah, it really is an
Mm.
honor and a privilege to serve in those environments, and as well as being a learning experience for yourself, like still being
Oh
young at
yeah,
that time.
yeah,
What
yeah.
was your feedback on people who go to retreats? Do you think they come when they're completely exhausted and burnt out, and you as a practitioner wish they didn't let themselves get so run down, or do people just
Um,
go, no, this is something I do? Has it changed over the years? Like,
I, Back then, definitely. Back then, it was a real struggle for retreat workers to educate that preventative care is
mm,
and that importance, not just wait until the end of the year or the end of whenever your anniversary of your last retreat to come back for the next. But we were also dealing with people who um, lived at a fairly high pace in life, either through the entertainment industry or through business ownership. They lived busy lives, and they saw the retreat experience as letting the plug out and letting all everything drain away, and then they'd fill up the sink again. They
mm,
had the money and the means to do so. but they hadn't really thought about what happens when you get home. And one of my colleagues who worked there now owns an urban spa retreat down in Victoria, and she'd actually met a guest there, married, and they built that, and it was her. She basically implemented what we all knew, and that was we need to build something for them to go to in between their retreat runaways so that
Yeah.
they could continue the work. And I'd been a couple of guests, I'd gone into their homes and run private retreats for them on my weeks off. That had happened from time to time. There was another guest who I went over to the LA and had spent 6 weeks with the family. Eventually, I think they were trying to have me as their private nanny, but I ended up going over there and doing some keynote speaking whilst I was there, and really implementing what we did in the retreat environment for them in their home. And it was an extremely successful part of their retreat experience, because when they came back to the retreat, they weren't so ragged from their lifestyle.
Yeah.
But these days, I think what we're finding now, it's so much easier to emulate the retreat experience, because costs of things like massage chairs and spas, like you can get an inflatable spa for $800 these days. People are getting massages now more often. It's become more of a normal sort of process of dealing
Yeah.
with life. So I think, and the bathhouses that have popped up left, right, and center. So I think now that whole immersive retreat experience is just the cherry on top. So it's a real immersion to go in. But back then it was like a survival kit for a lot of people. They'd come in, literally pull up out of their limousines with their suitcases and collapse in front of you. And
Ah,
some of them were coming off some decent recreational drugs that we had to send them back out to a detox clinic, a medical
detox
detox clinic,
first.
to come before they'd come to us to do that. The amount of times we had to sit down and work out what drug is this that they were taking that they're coming off from right now. So it was interesting. And eventually I became the naturopath there. So it was such a great experience. And as a practitioner, I learned a lot from other practitioners as well there. I learned how there to pr- properly protect myself when giving
Mm,
massage so I didn't become exhausted. I
mm,
didn't learn that in my massage course. I learned that in the retreat by another wiser older woman who taught me how to use my body differently during treatment. And I'd never forgotten that. I only not long had finished doing massage, only a couple of years ago, only because my naturopathic work was really becoming just so important to me, and I really wanted to just dive into that further. And physically, my wrists weren't going so well. So, but energetically,
mm.
learning that in the retreat environment, yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Wow. We've
Mm.
certainly come a long way. It's almost reminds me of yo-yo dieting or, like weight is like this roller coaster ride of health. And I can just picture what you said of people just collapsing into a health retreat. And now, that with more awareness into natural health and opportunities and more being more affordable, as you said, it should be
Mm.
just a part of just looking after yourself and not waiting till you collapse. I think that's so important. And I also love what you shared about just protecting yourself as a practitioner, because
Mm.
that's right. So many practitioners just burn out too early in the area that they're wanting to invest in other people's health. It's crazy. So you do, as a practitioner, have to look after yourself. Now
Absolutely.
I love the way your role has just allowed you to travel internationally. As a health advisor, you've worked with Mandura Spa and Hyatt International, I believe, and you've also helped to create international spa standards.
That's
What did
correct.
that involve?
So when I was hired, again, this is the connection through the retreat industry. So the young lady who gave me the first opportunity to work at Camp Eden, replacing her role, and then working for her in her retreat at Mullumbimby. She then went on and became a spa consultant, and she asked me if I would follow her along and start working for Mandara Spa. So my very first retreat in Mandara Spa, running and opening from construction up, from a five-star hotel construction up, then educating and teaching the local employees that we hired how to do treatments, how to do spa treatments, but it was also how to service, how to do reception, all of that. It was from the start to the finish of a client's experience. And
Mm.
again, it was really interesting because we were taking young people who didn't have a background in beauty therapy. We taught them that. Or if they had, it was very, very basic because we're talking about, small villages, people in small villages coming across the river in Malaysia and joining the five-star hotel industry. So there was a big leap for them to learn that. So my previous experience had taught me how to, because I had to bridge that gap myself, how to bridge that gap and understand how to do certain levels of service and how to read certain nuances of guests.
Mm.
Because again, we're dealing with guests who travel, who've got money, who've got an expectation. And this time it was in a Muslim country. So we also had some of the challenges about women massaging men and various different aspects of what was considered kosher in terms of even accessing the same rooms. So there were some
Mm.
really interesting operational challenges there. And I was there for about 5 months in Kota Kinabalu. And then my the company I was working for, needed to have a manager go over to Aruba. But on the way, I needed to do this American fusion trip. So I had a number of red eye flights through Guam, LA, um, Las Vegas, Hawaii, which is where they had all of their flagship spas. And I
Yeah.
learned an incredible amount through that, through volume. And I mean, we had spas in Australia that, from Camp Eden was a couple of rooms. These were like hundreds of rooms and
Wow.
3,000 room hotels, and it was another level altogether. So, and again, bringing the Indonesian aspect from Mandara Spa, which had headquarters in Bali, bringing that over and overseeing the delivery of on container ship, the delivery of all of our traditional Indonesian tables and foot and bathware and everything that we used in Bali was being shipped over to Aruba. And Aruba is, if you put your finger on Sydney and you put your finger on the globe directly opposite, you'll find Aruba. So
Mm.
it's literally on the other side of the world. So,
Mm.
so it was interesting going into these other countries and going particularly into Aruba where there was a very small expat community. So the population on Aruba is around 100,000 back then, and 50% of that were expats, and the rest were broken up into various blends of Dutch and local Aruban families. And again, we're drawing from a small pool of young people who had never really experienced much in the way of service in the spa industry because spas weren't really a thing there. And we were opening the Marriott Ocean Club. It was massive. So we had a job on my hands, and I had some very interesting characters that worked with me. One of my staff members ended up, we had to let her go, but that was on the back of her breaking into an American Airlines flight and sprouting some kind of, weird stuff. But, it was very difficult to get like what we take advantage of the fact that here on the Gold Coast, particularly with Camp Eden, we had like an incredibly rich bank of very well versed and very skilled therapists. And, when you're going into the third world countries or into countries that are just getting started in that type of industry for the first time, and no one's ever trained in that area, we're now dealing with people who they're learning these skills for the first time. It was such a baptism of fire. I got
Oh.
sick very often over there because of the stress more so. But then I was headhunted back from there by Hyatt. And so writing these international standards for Hyatt was basically getting my team to write down what they do. And thank God, I'd forgotten just how wonderful Australian therapists were. And I didn't have to oversee them so much as what I did with the Malaysian and Aruban team. So the standards essentially was basically setting out a whole range of standard operating procedures that
Mm-hmm.
broke down. I literally just said to everyone in their departments who I could trust, you're in the hair department, in the physical education, because I looked after the tennis court, our department looked after the tennis courts, but had squash courts. But everybody that was involved in every aspect of that particular spa, which was at the time considered probably one of the most prestigious, well-visited spa areas in Australia. It was like the Hyatt Coolum. That was my flagship. That was my base. And our team wrote all of the standards for how to deliver every aspect of opening the facility to closing it, and how to deal with customer conflict, how to deal with appointments, how to use the particular appointment computer program back then, which was Rio, which is, you know, I was even working with the developers of Rio saying, this is not working. We need to do it this way. Can you redevelop the program to suit our environment? And so, and the development side, the tech side was an IT thing, was not something I was at all accustomed to. Everything was very much not that, other than hotel bookings. So, you know, when in the hotel room. So it was really interesting. You know, we had our own, little hub of people working at Coolum, and then I would take those standards and go to the next hotel that Hyatt was opening, and I was on their opening teams. So I was there supporting the manager that was going to be staying there full time on getting her teams going. So getting them trained up and ready to go, and all of the equipment there, and all of the training and operational side of things ready to go. We did soft runs, we did proper hotel soft runs. So I was living in-house in a hotel that was still being built and running the spa department with the managers and interviewing teams and getting their uniforms ready, like everything from operation that you could imagine from ground up. So
Wow.
it was pretty big. It was minimum 6 weeks, 17-hour days, 7 days a week. No time off until the opening had been completed. So
This is so
was.
much above your basic qualification. This is full on hotel management.
And I had
And
no background in hospitality at all. It was
incredible.
just a baptism of fire. I mean, back then there was really no proper training in
No,
that
you just did
area.
it.
We were paving the way for that. Now you can train as a spa director, you can train as a spa manager, you can train in spa therapy treatments
Yeah,
specifically for spas. So, but none of that we were literally breaking ground there whilst the hotel
amazing.
was breaking ground. And a lot of that was happening simultaneously. So, yeah, it was pretty interesting. So we'd finish our days in the spa, but then I'd be into doing audits and soft runs for the other departments. So the hotel bar, the hotel restaurants, the hotel's laundry service, the reception and check-in, the housekeeping department. And so it was it was wild. It was
Those younger
wild.
ones listening into this episode, this is back in the day where we didn't have defined roles. You just do what's required, and sometimes that was sounds like it was just doing everything. I talk about
It,
doing
it
10 people's jobs.
It was, you literally had no time to think about it. You just had to do it and respond and hold your head up high and deliver service at the same
Yeah,
time. So it was a really interesting process. But back then, Annie, we didn't have mobile phones to distract us.
exactly. We had a lot more hours in the day.
We
Now,
did.
listen, just as in a shift, then somewhere in this journey, you became a mum to Phoebe, and
Yeah,
this changed everything. What
it
was
sure did.
what was that journey like for you?
Whew, that was hard.
Mm,
That was hard. So I fell pregnant with Phoebe when I was about to accept a Hyatt job opening their what was at that stage their next biggest flagship hotel, which was the Grand Hyatt Plateau in Hong Kong. And I found out I was pregnant. And 5 weeks into the pregnancy, I started to hemorrhage and I thought I was miscarrying. But I wasn't. It was a hematoma on the placenta, and I just had to rest. But I hadn't actually told anybody that I was pregnant. And about 2 months prior to that, I'd given Hyatt Fulham my resignation because I wanted to reconsult myself out
mm,
as a contractor to do just openings. So I was just going to travel the world and do openings. And so, but I gave them 2 months' notice. I said to them in the July, I'm going to plan on leaving in the September because I've got this opening job in October in Hong Kong. So, and I was going to be gone for like 4.5 months for that. So it was at that stage, I thought, this is it. This is my career. It's going to go nuts, and I'm going to have the best time. I'm going to be traveling everywhere, and not sure my partner at the time was all that happy with that. But anyway, we bought a house in the August, fell pregnant pretty much straight away, and my job finished in September. And and then so, but at the same time, when I contacted Hyatt Hong Kong, they said, we can't have you on site. This job's not going to suit a mum. And I thought I was bulletproof and I could do everything. I'm like, you sure? Like, pretty sure I'll be okay. I'll be right. Anyway, as it turned out, I wasn't okay, and neither was the baby. And Phoebe was at that point in distress, and I needed to stay home. And at the first ultrasound, we found that she was going to be born with a cleft lip and palate. So I thought, okay, it's probably a good thing I wasn't out of the country at that stage, and that I'd picked up some part-time reception work through a friend of mine who found me through my old manager at Hyatt, and he said that would be looking for work anyway. So I finished up work there when it was time to have a baby, and about 7 weeks beforehand, Phoebe's dad left and decided he couldn't do this journey, and I had to work out life from there. So
Wow,
that was how hard I guess it
that is
was,
huge.
because I knew that she was going to need surgery pretty much straight away. So she had her first surgery at 13 weeks of age, having a lip repair. So she had a unilateral right cleft with a complete palate. So it was full on from there. So there was some pretty decent mental health stuff going on for me. I was under the watchful eye of the Gold Coast Uni Hospital for every day for 6 months, from the time they found out that I was going to be on my own to when Phoebe was born, to sit in that over that 6 month period, because she was really concerned about me taking my own life.
Mm,
And so I was such a high risk patient, and high risk because of her pregnancy, not just being pregnant.
yeah.
And so when she was born 2 weeks early, about a couple of weeks after that, it was I knew that I was going to be very much on my own, because I thought maybe it was a little bit of cold feet on behalf of the other half, but it was like no. And it was just full tilt from there. I wasn't working, and I couldn't work at the time. I was relying on financial support from someone who didn't want to give it. And I also couldn't get Social Security, ironically, because I had a property that I bought, and I had a renter in there. And I was just going to wait until the tenancy ran out and then move in. But so I was without financial support for a while. It was pretty stressful.
Mm,
But eventually, once I did move back there, things started to settle in. I couldn't really do much work at that point in time. But during my pregnancy, I went back to my old homeopathic teacher, Lorraine Morley, and I consulted her, because when I found out my daughter was going to be born with a cleft, I thought maybe we could do some homeopathic work and see if we can do something for the body, for my body, for her body. And at that point, she revealed to me that she was also diagnosed with cancer, and she was looking for a practitioner to look after her clients while she was going in for treatment. And at that stage, I said, look, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to go back to practice just yet, but I could certainly, think about it maybe afterwards. So I saw her a few times at that point. I got contacted by the owner of Gwingana, and he also asked whether or not I could do some spa consulting work. So they were opening up Gwingana at that point in time, or about to start opening. And a couple of people I worked at Camp Eden was working at Gwingana as well. So I went there, but unfortunately, I was so far heavily pregnant at that point in time, it just wasn't going to happen. And there was a few other tragedies that happened in that time. Some people that I met at a dinner that we had at Gwingana had passed away tragically in a plane crash. And also, I had lost a good friend through suicide during the pregnancy as well. So there was a decent amount of stress going on during that pregnancy leading up to when she was born. So for me, it was like, I'm done. I don't want to work at the moment. And baby was born. I had 12 months of surgeries and appointments in Brisbane almost weekly. and it was pretty hectic. There was just no room for me to work. But at that stage, I was able to get some form of financial support. But I knew that I was going to have to get back to work at some point.
Mm.
Some friends of mine who he was a professional speaker, needed someone just doing data entry. And I said, look, can I just come and do something with you for a little while? I need to get some income, but I don't have the bandwidth to take on patients at the moment. And I just need to find my feet somehow. So for about 15 months, I did data entry for a professional speaker. Then I started back in practice not long after that. Once I felt like my breathing had regulated finally enough to be able to think in terms of going back to practice. And at that stage, Lorraine's cancer had come back. It had been, a decent break for her. She got into remission, but then things had ramped up. And I said, look, if you're still looking for someone, and she said, well, I had someone, but now they've just dropped the ball. I said, I'm ready. So
Mm.
she mentored me for 5 years during the last 5 years of her life. And I
Wow.
watched her go through what she went through at the base of her house where she had, so it was not far from where I am right now. And I literally just took over business from her, learned everything I could learn through her mentoring me about homeopathic prescribing, but also helping me, her and her husband, beautiful Colin, who just recently passed away, helped me get back into association registration. So that's
Mm.
when I came back to ATMS, and finally got back into practice on my own and felt confident to now take cases. And some of those patients I'm still looking after.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
so I've now got a legacy of them, their children, and now their grandchildren, which is just amazing.
That's
So
pretty special.
I
Wow,
have a lot
what a
to
roller
owe.
coaster journey you have had, and wow,
Yeah.
there's some really challenging times there. You are one strong lady. What
Mm.
did Lorraine teach you beyond her knowledge? Were there as a mentor? Mentor is so different to coaching, I think. Did she give you some truths that you really felt were profound in that being able to pull your life back together post her passing, if you like?
Yeah, I think the thing that she demonstrated the most was that there's always a way. There is always something we can do. And if the thing that you thought you're going to do isn't possible for the patient or for you, find another way, and there's always another way. And she taught me just to lean back into all of the modalities, even though homeopathy was her specialty. And I learned a lot about constitutional prescribing there. And when we studied through her at the college, we were also able to graduate as homeopaths as well as naturopaths back then. So I learned an incredible amount about homeopathy. But she always embedded into me that there's always going to be something you can do for your patients. Don't
Mm,
ever feel like there's nothing you can do. I actually think that contributed to me being in this industry as and contributing to my longevity there, because I
mm,
never gave up and I never let the patient give up.
mm, mm,
There's patients that have given up because they haven't got the fortitude there to keep going, or something's not clicking. But for me, it was like I've got patients over that time who remember some of those messages from back then in the early days, and some of the things I've said to them I've forgotten that I've said to them, but I remember that one with Lorraine. It was embedded into me very strongly that there's always something that you can do.
mm. So
Yeah.
true. So true.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you fall into EFT, or I know you've even done work in Port Vila and like all over the place. Journey, is there something specific? Is that emotional connection? What led you into that sort of area of work?
So as I got further into my career over the last sort of 8 years or so, I always had this feeling that I'm not qualified enough to do proper counselling. Even though we did counselling studies or we did psychology studies in our course, um, I felt like I needed something kind of backing up my qualifications. And
Mm,
so I had a patient of mine who had started using EFT. This is about 10 or 12 years ago. And I thought, oh, I've never heard of it. Let me go and investigate. And I thought, oh, this sounds interesting, but perhaps a little bit I don't really understand it that much. And at that point in time, I didn't really have the finances and the consistency in my practice to go and do another course.
Mm.
So I let it go, and I just sort of, it was like it sparked a little flame there, but I thought I can't go there just yet. I need to focus on getting my practice up and running, move, because I'd moved the practice after Lorraine had passed away to another shared practice and in Currumbin, and I needed to focus on making finances work because
Mm.
things had started, really rolling around with my daughter and things, it was challenging there, etc. And so I was at a conference, I'm at a genetics conference with a colleague of mine who I'd befriended, and she said, "Oh, what do you?" And we just started talking about EFT, the course that she's about to do, and I went, "Oh, really? Tell me more about that." And she told me, I went, "Oh, that's right, tapping. I've heard of it." She said, I said, "Oh," it just instantly went in, similar to that naturopath word dropped in, EFT dropped in. And I went, I need to do this. The same thing happened with my next chapter as well as fasting coach. But I just, it was an instant yes, the moment it all came back to me, and I ended up doing the course with her. And so she was my tapping buddy. She's also, we call each other our joy buddies now, on the back of one of the metagenics. In fact, it may have been that conference. Um, and so we did that, and then I went on and did trauma tapping. So I extended that because I was so enamored by EFT and what it can do for people and how easy it was to implement and how amazing it is as a technique to then teach your clients, your patients, how to do tapping as a prescription for self-care without actually ingesting anything. I mean, it was just like it gave me another tool. It gave me another, there's more that you can do. There is always something you can do. So it's sort of kind of closed the doors a little bit more for me in my practice, and rounding out that part that I felt like I hadn't really been trained up enough on or was prepared to say and back myself with confidence. The moment I did EFT, I had confidence in handling mental health. It was incredible. I mean, I was reasonably confident before, but this was just a whole nother level again. So, and I've been loving some of the responses I've been getting in EFT with the aha moments. I get a full visceral experience in my body. I tear up and I get goose pimples when things drop in. So I can't help it. I'm not one of these practitioners who can be hard. It's a total empathetic process. And I have to remind my patients not to apologize for me getting teary, because it's for me, and I've explained that to them, it's really actually how this is meant to work. We're meant to be empathetic towards each other, and we're
Mm.
meant to be able to do that. But I'm very aware on how to maintain my professional distance as well. So for me, I'm not getting sad and involved in your emotional experience other than feeling that this cleared the path for you. And I can feel it in my own body, and it feels amazing. So much
Mm.
so that I have that teary feeling, that somatic feeling in my own system. So but it's become a very, very strong confirmation tool for me as a practitioner and as a postmenopausal woman. But my intuition is now working in with that, and it's become a real strength of my practice.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. So, just to close, if someone is listening in to this episode and they're feeling overwhelmed, depleted, not in abundant health, not at all, completely the opposite, what's one
Mm.
gentle place where they could begin their journey in natural medicine?
I'd say pay attention to your breath,
Mm.
because your breath is giving you some really good insight into what your body's needing. And if you can't feel your breath fully in and out, then you need to stop long enough to be able to do just that at the very least.
Mm.
And the second part of that is, don't forget that nutrition is your friend. So use your food as your ally,
Mm.
not as a crutch and not as a weapon that you use against you. My training under Dr. Mindy Pearls, the fasting coach, she really honed in on just reminding me as a practitioner that our beautiful bodies tell us absolutely everything it needs to tell us. And all we need to do is listen to its language, which are symptoms. And as a practitioner, if you're getting symptoms, don't ignore those. You're not above looking after yourself at all. And in fact, if anything, it can give you some really great insight into how to look after your next patient, because oftentimes those symptoms are very similar to what they're experiencing.
Mm,
So sometimes
fantastic
we're given
advice.
those symptoms as a gift.
Mm, there
Mm,
you go. Thank
mm.
you, Nicky Wood, for being such a beautiful guest today on Let's Talk Natural Medicine. It's been
Thank you.
amazing to tap into a little bit into such an amazing career journey. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you to our amazing listeners. It's so great to have you join us on our episodes here. We have more to come, so stay tuned. If you haven't yet joined our community of Friends of Natural Medicine, it's free. All you have to do is scan the QR code if you're watching this video, or go to atms.com.au and click on Friends, and there you'll be able to get an email into your inbox every 2 weeks, which will give you a recipe from one of our celebrity chefs. You'll also get a blog written by one of our accredited practitioners. You'll get links to maybe this episode or others on Let's Talk Natural Medicine, and so much more. So make sure you join us, share this with your network, and we look forward to seeing you again in our very next episode. Till then, stay naturally well. This episode is sponsored by BioGland MedLab. Backache, mild joint stiffness, muscle soreness, and inflammation impacting how you move and feel each day. Try BioGland MedLab Clinical Pain Relief, a triple action formula with clinically researched term extra turmeric and Apris-Flex boswellia to help relieve mild joint pain and reduce inflammation, with benefits reported from as little as 5 days. Get back to doing the things you love. Learn more at bioglandmedlab.com.au. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.